All right. I am super excited to be presenting this webinar that is right off the press, hot off the press. And if you are joining me tonight to go over this really, I think, breakthrough webinar, you're going to get a lot of value out of it. And I really respect your time. I know how important it is, especially when you're exhausted and you're burnt out and you're looking for answers, you're frustrated, you're searching on the internet, and you want to make sure that that investment of time is worthwhile because there's only a little bit of energy that you have to be able to find answers. And when you invest that energy in something that doesn't give you a return of that energy investment back to you, I know how debilitating and fatiguing that can be. So what I want to do is I want to just go right into it and talk to you about this brand new webinar that I created. And it's called The 5 Essentials for Ending Your Exhaustion, Your Midday Crashes, Your Sleeplessness, and Generating Lasting Energy so that you look and feel 10 years younger. Now, I know that's a mouthful, but I wanted to think about what are all the things that you're suffering with that you're looking for answers in regards to. And so that was the name of the webinar that I came up with. And so let me ask you let me tell you who this is for. This is for adults that are over 40, although we work with patients that are younger than 40, and we certainly work with patients that are older than 40, but you're really struggling to generate enough energy. It seems like your age is catching up with you, and you're really unable to keep up with the pace of life, and really you're unwilling to accept how bad you feel as just a natural consequence of aging, and you're desperately searching for answers regarding your health because you've tried so many things that didn't work, and you just know inherently something's wrong, and being told that nothing is wrong with you medically just does not sit well with you. And in the next 45 minutes, what I really want to do is I want to give you the latest breakthroughs in the field of longevity and health optimization, and why you can no longer put your trust, at least 100% of it, in or the faith in your traditional, flawed, and outdated medical approach. And the reality is there's research that shows it can be up to 17 years before what is being researched now hits the streets. And no more is that evident in the field of longevity and health optimization. And so we also want to teach you about how to tap into your body's endless energy reserves, because there is an endless energy reserve once you tap into it. And you can do it almost instantly, no matter how far-fetched that seems, even if you've been running on fumes for years. And what I also want to do is expose the never addressed stress energy connection, because really that's not talked about. Yes, we're talking about fatigue and burnout, but we don't look at it from an energetic point of view and how stress impacts the demand for energy and reduces the supply. And when that happens, you're going to see some accelerated aging. And what I want to teach you also is the ground zero, what I call ground zero reasons for your rapidly aging symptoms. And it really seems so basic, yet this is information that's practically unknown in the medical curriculum, certainly in the insurance provider networks. They don't want to reimburse for this. It's a pharmaceutically driven model, and I really don't want to get too much into that. And really, public health is not necessarily aware of these ground zero reasons for not having energy. And ultimately, I want to teach you how to regain your strength, vitality, and confidence, knowing what it takes to turn back your biological clock and recharge your energy production consistently, day in, day out. Like, that's one of the biggest things that I hear is they don't know what you need to do. So wouldn't it be nice to know, what is it that I need to do in order to really move the needle and rewind the clock, if you will, and stop putting band-aids on your health problem and put all the rapidly agedly puzzle pieces together with precision so that you can end the frustration of throwing stuff against the wall and just see what sticks. And finally, I want you to end the insanity, because it really is insanity, of going to another new doctor or another medication or another supplement and doing the same approach and expecting a different result. But what does continue is the nickel and dime drain to your bank account. So I want to talk to you about that. And really, the biggest challenge I see is you could be one hospital visit away from bankruptcy. And I'm very aware of how exorbitant the cost for a 3-day stay in the hospital is, or having surgery, or another drug, or another procedure, another supplement. It really is draining your bank account, and that adds more stress to you, especially if you're not able to work and you're really wondering, is this going to work for me, because I don't have the luxury of time, energy, and money to hope that it works. And ultimately, I want to discuss with you how to reverse, we call it reverse, your cellular aging blueprint that we teach our private coaching clients, and have that work for you as well. So, my promise to you in the next 45 minutes or so is a step-by-step roadmap to end your exhaustion and your energy crashes, and how to optimize your health naturally so you look and feel 10 years younger. So, before I do that, though, let me check in with you and see if this sounds like you. Do you realize that with stress, it's a part of life, but you've been battling it for so long that now when you look in the mirror, you can't deny seeing that worn out look of exhaustion in that individual staring back at you? Do you realize that you just don't produce enough energy to do the things you need to accomplish? And now you're seriously questioning whether your body is beginning to break down, or that you might have to accept that this is going to be your new normal. This is going to be as good as it gets. And you just have to face the facts. Do you secretly know that with all the doctor visits that you've had, everything you've been told, that something is being missed, that you're not crazy, that you're not being told something that you need desperately to know? And the longer it goes on and unaddressed, the more rapidly you age. It's like I always say, if there's a fire that is an ember that hasn't been extinguished, it doesn't take much of a gust of a wind before that whole forest is ablaze. Do you feel that you're sort of one gust of wind away from the forest being blazing when you're told that there's no fire and you know there is? Does how run down you're feeling scare the heck out of you? That you are no longer that same independent, productive person, and the lack of energy has impacted your confidence and how you look and feel, both personally and professionally. Does that sound like you? Let me ask you this. Are you confused or frustrated by all the conflicting information out there? Because I know you're doing your research and you hear this and then you hear that. Are you really starting to question whether your blood tests are normal, or that the current health approach that you're doing isn't cutting it, or it's behind the curve of the latest and greatest in anti-aging and longevity advancements? You feel like you're missing out on you're not invited to the party. And now, because of that, you're stuck. You have no clue where to start and what to do next, especially after all the diets you've tried, the supplements you're taking, and the strategies that just didn't work. And you're not really sure what's coming or going and what's making a difference. Does that sound like you? Let me ask you this. Are you terrified that this rapidly aging downward spiral that you're on will continue to accelerate, causing you to struggle more and more and feeling miserable in the process? Are you, are you terrified about that? Because if you are, I want to give you some good news. I want to let you know that those are not the real problem. Those are just symptoms of a much, much bigger problem. And we're going to explain what that is. And once you understand that and you make that paradigm shift, You're going to learn how to rediscover what it used to feel like when you would actually have a solid night's sleep and wake up energized, motivated to restart projects that you've been putting on the back burner. And I know sometimes you can have some energy, but it's sort of hit or miss. It's like Russian roulette, and you don't really know why. And you just want to capture that in a bottle and be able to have that consistently. Or once you understand what the real problem is, you're not going to second guess yourself or your doctors, ending your confusion about what's the most effective approach, because you're going to know it, and that you would never get access to if you continued in the same healthcare system that you're already on. And once you understand the real truth, you'll feel as if you turn back that clock to a time when you felt confident, strong, capable, accomplishing any of the tasks that you set your mind out to. And once you really understand what's going on, you're going to feel those layers of stress from all the years that they've compiled on you literally peel away one by one, or it's almost like you're cutting away a dead weight anchor that's been pulling you down all these years. And once you understand really what's going on, you're finally going to end your frustration and regain control of how good you look and feel, recapturing your confidence and all the hard work that you poured into your recovery. I know there's nothing more frustrating than putting in the work and doing the time and making the sacrifices only to see other people that don't even care about their health have good health, or at least seem like they do, and have the energy and run circles around you. Or wouldn't it be nice to be able to completely impress everyone around you with your reclaimed energy, like you used to be that energizer bunny, and ending your feelings of not living up to your own expectations, let alone everyone else's expectations, because you have a lot of things to do and you desire to have the capability to do whatever it is you feel in life. That's what you're going to get out of that. So, before I get into that, who am I? Hopefully, you may have you know who I am by now. Maybe you don't, but I am an international health coach. I have coaching patients all over the world. I'm very grateful to be able to serve these amazing people. And I've built an online community of almost 60,000 followers, and really focusing on exhausted and burnt out men and women, and really personally coached over 300 of them using the exact strategies that you're going to learn tonight. I have a high ranking podcast, and I'm a sought out speaker at biohacking conferences. And I'm a leader in the functional medicine and what is the new emerging field of health optimization and longevity. And I had had major burnout myself. I had just graduated with my doctorate, and my wife was pregnant with twins, and I re-injured my back. I moved from Canada to the US. I was over $250,000 in debt, starting my practice in a new town, and almost losing my twins in pregnancy. And I was just exhausted and burnt out. And I was searching for answers. I wasn't getting the support. I was looked at like I was crazy. I was told that I was normal, and I didn't have the time or the inclination to accept that. And I used my background in education to go down the rabbit holes. And it's been now 20 plus years of going down those rabbit holes and figuring out what works, and continually refining the roadmap so that it's customized to actually get at what's not working metabolically in your body, and not just throwing pills or supplements or reductionistically doing this, that, or the other. And I want to teach you exactly how I discovered these 5 fundamentals to go from exhausted to all day energy, so that you can turn your clock back at least 10 years. So the fundamental principle number 1, and this is brand new because I just made this webinar the other day, and it's really understanding the difference between chronological age and biological age. So what does that mean? Well, chronological age, as you know, it refers to a person, it's a calendar, how long you've been alive. And biological age is the process that your cells gradually losing their function. So the more rapidly aging your body is, the more your biological age is, and the better your cells are metabolizing or metabolically active, the lower your biological age is. And really, chronological age is fixed, and biological age is responsive. And this is research that's coming out the pike as we speak. And while your chronological age will always be at a fixed rate, biological age can show a summary of your lifestyle choices, your behaviors, your diet, and it can really be addressed and altered. To test is to know, and to be able to objectively see the rate that you're aging at from a biological clock can really give you power over what your choices are and if they're working. Does that make sense? And so chronological age itself is not an accurate predictor of health and disease. And unfortunately, the medical model only looks at chronological age in this day and age. And they ultimately, everyone is a bit different on a biological level. Lifestyle, genetic predispositions, experiences, they'll all affect your cellular processes, and those things affect your biological age. Biological age is accelerated biological aging, is the rapidly loss of the systems in the body, and it's the number one predictor of chronic disease, morbidity, and death. And wouldn't you want your doctor to teach you about that and test you for that, and give you and empower you to be able to learn how to do the specific things that will support your cellular processes so that you slow down the rate of aging and even reverse it? I mean, I'm sure you would. The difference between rapidly accelerating cells and slowly aging can mean the difference between a long and healthy life or premature onset of age-related chronic diseases. And people with a younger biological age are obviously at a lower risk from suffering age-related diseases. And so it really behooves us to have accurate measurements of your biological age. And it's a key tool for clinicians to be able to judge, hey, what am I doing? Is it implementing, and is having effect? Is it changing these biological markers? And in the red, this is really the point of number one is traditional medicine does not test these biological markers. They're testing metabolic, old, unreliable markers that really don't alter the game plan unless you're too high or too low, and it becomes a pharmaceutically driven approach. And unfortunately, these biomarkers aren't being tested, and they're not giving us any insight on the aging process. And because the population is getting sicker and sicker and sicker, the ranges are getting wider and wider. And unless you're really sick or way sicker than the average sick person, you're going to be told that you're normal. But that has nothing to do with your biological age. I mean, it doesn't really even look at your chronological age. It just assumes that if you're feeling this way and you feel lousy and your blood tests are normal, you'll be told, Mrs. Jones, your blood tests are normal, and it's just a normal fact of aging, right? I mean, so that's the first shift that you have to understand is that there's a difference between chronological age and biological age. And chronological age is your birth certificate. Biological age is the rate at which your cells are performing their functions. And it's been proven through genetics, environment, lifestyle choices, dietary approaches, supplements, longevity and health optimization strategies that you can reverse your clock. And if you're not testing for it, how do you know? So that's the first shift. The second shift is really understanding energy production 101. And this really should be the first shift, but I put it as the second shift. And energy production 101 is not taught in traditional schools, traditional medical schools, and even to a certain extent, alternative practices. And really, it should come down to every cellular function in your body comes down to energy production. And people get confused about this because they say, well, I don't have that bad energy. I mean, I'm not doing marathons, but at the same time, I have energy to do this and that. And I'll say, well, why are we talking? And they'll say they don't have energy because they have brain fog, or they crash in the middle of the day, or their hormones are off. They don't have libido. They feel awful inside. And I was like, well, you need energy to run your cells, to run your organs, to run the tissues, to run the system. And if you don't look at it from an energy production standpoint, you'll know how to put together your protocol to get energy because it's focused on that. So let me give you some basics. Mitochondria, we hear about mitochondria all the time. And where a lot of doctors go wrong is just looking at giving support for mitochondria. But ultimately, it comes down to cellular respiration, where energy is produced inside of the mitochondria. And the formula is combining the food you eat with your air that you're breathing. And that produces ATP and water. It comes down to that simplicity. And if your demand is bigger than your supply, you're going to be tired. If your supply is bigger than your demand, you're going to have a surplus. And this really comes down to basic economics. Your energy demand is greater than your energy supply, you're going to have danger responses in your body. And that's going to create a lot of oxidative stress. And that's going to create a lot of rapidly aging. Does that make sense? And so when you have to understand that it's not only about energy production 101, but if you're listening to this and you're dealing with any of the things we've mentioned, you're not using oxygen effectively. You're not combining the food you eat with the air you breathe to produce ATP and water. And ultimately, that formula requires the delivery of oxygen. And this is what's being missed is we take it for granted that that's happening effectively. And if you're listening to this, you have to assume guilty until proven otherwise. A, that you're not respiring at the cellular level effectively. You're not combining the food you eat with the air you breathe to produce ATP and water. And that's because you're not using iron effectively. And you have dysregulated iron patterns. And really, that's a reality of the world. There's no minerals in our soils. There's no copper in our soils. There's glyphosates in our soils. There's iron-enriched filings in our soils. And there's massive amounts of genetic susceptibilities where you're not using oxygen effectively. And when that happens, you're going to be tired. And I created this slide because I think it's so important. So many people will do a liver cleanse, a juice cleanse, a heavy metal detox, a gut repair protocol, and all can be very good. But let me ask you this. Think about how much oxygen is needed per second. And we can do that by explaining we need to replace 2.5 million red blood cells per second. So think of that. We need to replace 2.5 million red blood cells per second, and times that by 60, and then times that by 60 to get an hour, and then times that by 24 to get a day. Suffice to say, we need to replace several billion red blood cells a day and to be able to respire at the cellular level effectively. And if you're tired, I guarantee that's not happening. And no one is telling you about this. And you're rapidly aging. So really the formula requires you deliver oxygen effectively. And it depends on how well you combine these minerals and iron and copper and vitamin A, and really being able to understand how your body uses oxygen for you instead of using oxygen against you. Hopefully that makes sense. So ultimately, understanding energy production 101 is that the root cause always comes down to generating energy at the cellular level. Anything else that you do, whether it's a juice cleanse, a liver detox, a heavy metal protocol, a gut repair program, all of them are potentially effective, but they're downstream from respiring at the cellular level and repairing and replacing your red blood cells for a 24-hour period. That requires immense amount of energy that if you're not doing a good job, there's a lot of smoke coming out of your tailpipe. So let me give you a case study of Griffin. Griffin came to see me because he thought he had a problem with adrenal fatigue, where that was originally one of my main challenges. And now we actually get into the cellular mitochondrial energy production. And he realized that adrenal fatigue goes so much deeper than the adrenals. And in his words, he said he had zero chances of getting to the root cause of his fatigue issues on his own, or even with his local practitioner. And basically, we combined genetic testing with environmental testing, with lifestyle changes, with diet variation, with blood sugar control. And by the time we're done, he's a new guy, and we really connected the dots for Griffin and had such an amazing response. But it really explains the necessity to look outside the box and to look at the new way that healthcare is being practiced. So the fundamental number 3 is really the stress energy connection. And what does that mean? Well, it's all about your oxygen consumption rate. And what that means is stressors from your environment. And that's not just finances or relationships or to-do lists or children or work or whatever it may be emotionally, but environmentally, pesticides and sprays and toxins and solvents and plastics and endocrine disruptors. The reality is, unfortunately, they're everywhere. And that bombards your body on a day-to-day basis, year in, year out. And that increases the demand to use oxygen, to repair your red blood cells, and to breathe at the cellular level effectively. And ultimately, yes, it does signal your HPA axis, it signals your thyroid, it signals your sex hormones, and it signals your entire body. That's the point, is that your nervous system, your immune system, your psychological system, your cardiovascular system, they all are signaled. They're not independent of each other. And it requires more energy to be produced. And that requires you to deliver more oxygen to your mitochondria, and that increases your oxygen consumption rate. And if your demand is greater than your supply, then you're going to be exhausted. And so the old way, let's explain the old way that people would look at this. Basically, they would go see their traditional doctor. It would be a very quick visit. It'd be very limited with blood testing. And then the doctor would probably only do what your insurance would recommend. And the reality is there's a 17-year gap between what the research is telling us and what is practice. And ultimately, you don't have the time when you're exhausted and tired and you only have one life to live and you got to seize the moment to play that game. You don't. So typically what happens from there? Well, you're going to take a pharmaceutical approach, which isn't a bad thing if it were short term, if you were using that as a stopgap to get to the main cause of the problem and then get off that. But how many times does that ever happen? I see that unfortunately, things like Xanax and proton pumps inhibitors, they're meant to be short term, and people are on them for years, if not decades. And think about the challenges with your liver and detox from taking the problems and all the deaths that are related to injuries with medication. So there's painkillers, anti-inflammatories, sleeping pills, MAOs, and I'm pretty sure you know deep down that that's not fixing the problem. And you're concerned that is it making it worse? I'm sure. Then potentially you're referred to a specialist, whether it's an internist, psychologist, endocrinologist, maybe even you're going to see Chinese medicine practitioners, chiropractors, energy medicine. And again, they all have their time and place, But if they're not focusing on what's the number one problem, or the fact that you're not making energy at the cellular level effectively, everything's downstream from that. Well, you might say, well, I do the anti-aging approach. Well, okay, let's talk about that. Creams, pellets, compound, estradiol, T3, T4, aromatase inhibitors, uh, even hydrocortisone, prednisone. It really is like playing whack-a-mole. And I always say it's a lot harder for me to help someone that didn't get to the root cause of the problem, started putting band-aids on it, and started having side effects of the band-aids. And now we don't even just have to get to the root of the problem. We have to undo all the things that you tried to make it better by only making it worse by. That's what we see happen a lot of the time. Or it's a cookie cutter recipe where, hey, this blood test came back, you got to take this to make it higher, you got to take this to make it lower, you got to fight tooth and nail to get a doctor to be able to prescribe something for you or do another test. And ultimately you're marginalized and being told that, well, this isn't, there's nothing else we can do for you. You're not sick enough yet to come and get my help. It's like saying to the kid in grade school, you're only getting a C minus. When you get a F, then we can help you. And then the last way is really putting all the eggs in the basket approach, where you do these approaches with heavy metal detoxes, food elimination, diet roller coasters, juice cleanses, gut protocols, low histamine, and then you're not left with any food to eat. And then when that doesn't work, then it's basically told that, well, it must be you, you're broken. That's the old way. So really, to summarize that, quick visits, very limited time, only doing what insurance covers, 17 years behind the research, limited investigations, basing it on lab ranges, reductionistic approaches, pharmaceutical approaches, supplements against the wall, seeing what sticks, hoping and praying, all your eggs in the basket, referring you out to the specialist. And when none of that works, it's your fault, Mrs. Jones. It must be you. And that really makes me sad to know that that's still going on. But on the flip side, we have the new approach. And this is where you really see your skyrocketing of energy. And that comes down to your oxygen consumption rate, how well you're using oxygen. Are you using oxygen for you? Your demand and supply. Is your demands and supply equal? And then ultimately understanding the difference between biological age and chronological age, and what are the factors that improve biological age so that you can do more of them, or what are the factors that decrease biological age or accelerate it. And ultimately, when you're not using oxygen for you, that's what's going to accelerate it. So basically, you deliver oxygen more effectively, you repair your red blood cells, you respire at the cellular level. Now you've created a surplus and your supply is greater than your demand. And then you test and you look at these biomarkers that are responsible for cellular optimization, and you retest them and you see that your results are getting better. And if they're not, then you need to change your protocol and really have digitalized medicine where you can have an impact by not just throwing stuff against the wall. And when you do that, you supercharge your mitochondria, your energy surpluses, and you invest that wisely. So what I mean by that is, now that you have more energy, your body's going to be able to pay back the loans of expenses that haven't been met in a long time. And what does that mean? That means that now your libido's up again, or now you're regrowing your hair, or your hair's darker, it's not as gray, or your wrinkles, or you look younger, or you have a glow about you, and you have an energy about you, and you have a motivation about you, and there's something electric that's coming alive in you. And ultimately realizing that energy production isn't something you do one time. It's something that you do from a lifestyle point of view thereafter. And that's really something you have to embrace and realize. So making that stress energy connection and really basically flipping your metabolic switch is what we like to call it, and really recalibrating your mitochondria, and now using the food you eat and the air you breathe to make surplus of energy, where your energy supply is much bigger than your energy demand. And now you've flipped your switch from an energy consumer to an energy producer. And that's what it's going to take to create energy on demand. I hope that makes sense to you. So let me tell you about Anne. Anne was a really awesome patient of ours, and she was at a point where she was having the perfect storm of stressors. I'm sure you relate to that. And she wasn't sleeping well. She had extremely high amounts of caffeine and energy drinks. And then one day her body said that enough was enough. And she told me she felt like she was dying inside and that something was seriously, seriously broken. And when we did all of the protocols that we're teaching you here, she told me it was eye-opening to learn all of the different puzzle pieces. And not only is she back to where she was before her crash, she's in the best shape of her life. And that's really something I want to give you hope and confidence that that's possible. That whether you're 80 or you're 20, you cut your finger and your bodies, your cells have the natural inherent healing mechanisms in them, provided that your body isn't spending all of its valuable resources on putting out fires and not respiring effectively. So the fourth principle really comes down to metabolic optimization. So like we said, health is a verb. It's not something you just do one time. And this really requires a paradigm shift, because ultimately you got to think of it as we get stronger by stress, right? Meaning we don't want to have stress all the time, but we don't want to have no stress. And when we start to change the way we look at stress and know that we need it to be stronger, it allows us to be more metabolically flexible. It doesn't mean we're a glutton for punishment. It just means we know when to look at our stressors as painful and problematic versus temporary and necessary. And ultimately, once we do that, we're going to harness oxygen in times of stressors so that we have the ability and the muscle to be able to overcome those. And that really requires a couple of tools like calibrating your circadian rhythm, because every cell, organ, tissue, and system in the body runs on a circadian clock. And that means being aware of the patterns, whether they're seasonal or monthly or daily, and reprogramming your hardware so that you become metabolically flexible. And that really requires the awareness. And let me explain to you, Krista was dealing with issues of insomnia, and she was struggling most every night. And it was like her brain was constantly going, and she couldn't function. And she had to stop working, and it wasn't like she was living. And she just had a young child, and she was struggling every day. And the doctors would spend so little time with her. She actually told me she wasn't seeing any of the medical doctors anymore. But when she saw us, she mentioned that it wasn't like going to the doctor where you spend 5 to 10 minutes and then throwing a pill at you. We took a deep dive, and we took the time, energy, and effort to figure out what's not working in her body, what are the perfect puzzle pieces that are unique to her, and how can we get her biological age reversed. And she noticed not far into our protocols that her energy was much better. She was focusing. She went back to work, which was really, really important to her because she got a lot of inspiration and energy production by going there and doing something that was purposeful. And she was able to be with her son and pick up the hobbies that she had given up on for so long. So which brings me to my fifth principle, which is really cutting edge health optimization strategies. You've got to employ these things. And ultimately, it's one thing to be aware of these cutting edge strategies. It's a whole other thing to be invested in them. And that does take time, energy, and finances. Unfortunately, the traditional model, which is 17 years behind the research, that's pharmaceutically driven, that the doctor doesn't have more than 10 to 15 minutes to spend with you. And if your blood tests aren't normal or your blood tests are normal, they're just going to reductionistically do something with you. That's the insurance model. And unfortunately, that's something that you I would love to go to Congress and explain to them about why that's not helping people and why we're so sick. But there's a lot of financial, whether it's pharmaceutical or there is governmental influences. Bottom line, that's a whole other story. But if you want these cutting edge health strategies to optimize your health, it comes down to investing in your health. And really, when you do initiate these cutting edge strategies, you're saying yes to yourself because you deserve it. And you realize that you're really open to the idea that the possibility of healing when you put the time, because you're willing to put the time, you've put the time in already, and you're just spinning your wheels. And the energy and effort to get something that actually works would be heaven sent. And understanding that the difference between chronological age and biological age are two different things. And that really sums up the paradigm that biological age is not fixed and chronological age is fixed. And if you want to alter your biological age, you got to put time, energy, and effort into it. So obviously, having a complete understanding of what's at stake is what you need to be motivated and what your why is. Because if you don't fix this and you continue spinning your wheels and you continue your downward spiral, where are you going to be in 2 to 3 years or 5 years? And that's really a scary, alarming thing. Sometimes we need to smell that smelling salt to get a wake-up call and realize that you got to do something about it now. And understanding that there's a need for a healthcare team and a team member that's going to orchestrate these right biomarkers and put these game plans together so that you have all these puzzle pieces and you're able to be informed, and you can use the insights of your other doctors, or you just use the insight of your doctor that's going to help you with these biomarkers. And most importantly, believing and knowing that you are completely committed, and you know in your heart that you are worthy, your health and your vitality are possible, because those are some of the biggest obstacles to actually getting better. So today what I wanted to do is I just wanted to go over what I promised. I did promise the latest scientific breakthrough in the field of longevity and health optimization, and why you can't put your trust at least 100% in the traditional, flawed, outdated medical approach, or how to tap into your body's endless energy reserves almost instantly, no matter how far-fetched that seems. And I've seen it with my 86-year-olds, and they weren't told about how bad their oxygen consumption rate was, and we were able to really slow down and reverse that biological clock, even if you've been running on fumes forever. We also exposed the never addressed stress energy connection that increases your demand without increasing your supply, and that results in accelerated aging. And you know by now what that ground zero reason is for rapidly aging, and why it seems so basic: using oxygen for you instead of using oxygen against you. And it's not taught in the medical curriculum or your insurance provider or your public health policies. I dare you to ask your doctor about ceruloplasmin, and ask them about vitamin A and vitamin D, and ask them about your biological clock and diet variations. You're just not going to get that. So I also promised how to regain your strength and vitality and confidence, knowing that it's possible to turn back your biological clock and recharge your energy production. And also to learn to stop putting band-aids on your chronic health problems and really end the frustration of throwing stuff against the wall. And finally, ending the insanity of another new doctor, another new medication, another new supplement, but expecting a different result, and you're doing the same thing. And ultimately, what it is that we do with our own private patients that helps to reverse their cellular aging blueprint, and how you can make that work for you. So ultimately, those are the 5 things you need to win, which is number 1, understanding the fundamental paradigm that there's a difference between your chronological age and your biological age. Number 2, that the fundamental is energy production 101. Number 3 is the stress energy connection. The more stress, the increased demand for energy. Number four, metabolic optimization, and health is a verb, and understanding how we become stronger through stress and how we are able to really become metabolically flexible. And then lastly, investing in cutting edge health optimization strategies is really what it's going to take for you to win. So now I always come to this part of the presentation where you have a choice, and you could feel good about the information and be positive, but if you don't apply the information, it's not like you have the information. And if you have a challenge and you relate it to any of the things that we talked about today, and you have an ember that isn't being extinguished, when are you going to get that gust of wind that is going to cause the whole fire in the forest to go up? Or when are you going to have that major wake up call where you might be past that point of no return? And when do you need to actually make the decision to get your health back now, that it is possible? So what I've done is I've put together with my team in the next 48 hours a time to speak to you personally about these five fundamentals and how they apply specifically to your health journey. And I guarantee you, whatever your biggest challenges are, I've seen them, I've heard them. No challenge is too big. And your body, no body will refuse to heal when you cut your finger. Every single body has the inherent ability to heal. And so on this session, what we'll do is we'll help you craft a step-by-step roadmap to end your exhaustion, and teach you what it will require for you to rewind your clock, what your specific challenges are, how it's showing up in your body, what you've done, what you haven't done, where you want to go, and ultimately how to bridge that gap in the most rapid amount of time. And ultimately, the cost to do this is absolutely free. So you might be asking, well, why are you doing this for free? And ultimately, we do this because we know we can help you. This is a way for us to build our practice, but we also know that if you don't get this information, whether you choose to work with us or not, you're not going to see a high or the quality of life that you deserve. So this isn't for everyone, though. It's definitely, you have to be 100% committed. You have to, what we talked about has to make sense to you, and you have to realize how important your health is to get it back now, and ultimately have a deep desire to finally end your exhaustion and regain your health and realize that you deserve great health. So if that sounds like you, I definitely invite you to book a session with us. And basically, the way you do that is you go to bit.ly. So it's bit.ly, and then /regain my energy. So if I'm able to post these links, I will post a link for you. And these spaces book up very, very quickly. So I want you to go ahead and sign up for that. Again, bit.ly/regainmyenergy.com. So anyways, I hope that was really helpful for you. Let me tell you about one more of our patients. And he really had an amazing result. And Benjamin is from Germany, and he was frustrated, and he'd been to so many different doctors, and probably like yourself, he was really skeptical when we talked. And he was amazed to find out that the connecting dots between his skin issues, his stress, his fatigue, his motivation, his libido, his energy, were all connected. And I'm sure inherently you know that these things are all connected. And we were able to help him put all these puzzle pieces together, craft a protocol that works. And now he's back energized and helping other people get their energy back. So I hope this was very, very helpful for you. Make sure that you sign up for our no obligation, free, but you have to be committed and willing to make that next step, or at least be open to the idea that healing is possible for you. And go to bit.ly.com or bit.ly /regain my energy. And we look forward to ending your chronological age, biological age, rapidly aging nightmare. And hope you have a wonderful night, and we'll see you on the other side.